Good evening. It is Wednesday afternoon. I apologize. I am getting this out a little later than I had anticipated, but I wanted to give you all something in lieu of Bible study on tonight. One of the things I always do is something I call seeing God in everything. And so I'd like to share a little bit about that on tonight. I won't be before you long, so I do hope that you click on this and listen in its entirety. This one is a little bit funny, but if you listen at the underlying theme, you'll pick something up on tonight. And I want to call this I've Got Socks. And the reason I call it this, there's a certain joy that hits the soul when you slip on a brand new pair of socks. Not the old ones that you've watched so many times that they look like they've been through the Great Tribulation, but a fresh, cushion, never been stretched pair. And believe it or not, folks, they're the spiritual lesson that's tucked right in there. And I want to share that with you right quick because I had that experience just last week. Now, Nicole and I, we were talking, well, I was talking to her. Some sort of way I've accumulated two sock drawers. Believe it or not, growing up, I had a sock sack. Me and my brothers, and I think my sisters, they had some socks tucked away in there too. And I was always able to find one sock, and I'd have to ramble through that thing for a couple of minutes to find a match. And by the time I was in sixth, seventh grade, I was just looking for another sock. About a month ago, I'm looking through my drawers, folks, and I realize I've come to the same position. And it's just me. I have no one else to blame. They're not getting lost in the washing machine. They're not clogged in the dryer. If they were, there would be a problem there. But I'm down to single socks. But again, I don't have a sock sack now, but they're in a drawer. And so I made up in my mind, I'm going to buy me some socks. Now, I'll caution you, some of you, you can go out and or go online and just buy you any kind of socks. But if you're a person with feet as big as mine, you have to be mindful about this thing. And so I purchased a couple of pair that I've had to send back because they say they're one size and they didn't really fit. But last week, I found the holy grail of socks. I bought 12 pair. And so at the end of Thanksgiving, those two sock drawers will be bare and they will have those 12 pair that I'm going to wear. All of those unmatched pairs, they will be given away. But I want to share a little bit of when I was thinking about seeing God in everything, how this relates, how socks can relate to our lives. I'm thinking about old socks. Old socks could be like before we met Jesus. Old socks are just like that. Those old socks in that drawer. The ones that I really should have thrown away way back when the flip phones were still in style. And yeah, I am one of those guys that if I could have got the service connected on my flip phone, I probably would have still had that flip phone. But those kind of socks, those my wife called them quitter socks, where the rubber, the elastic in the sock no longer stays up. It quits around 12 o'clock, starts sliding down. Just a little. Let me give you some details about those socks that are in that drawer. They're loose and saggy. You know, like that life without direction, just sliding down around your ankles every time you take 5 steps in faith. Some folks without Christ in their life, that's the way they are. And some with Christ, you're still a little loose and saggy. Your faith walk needs to be strengthened. Those socks in that drawer, there's a lot of them that they're no support. You walk through life with zero spiritual arch, zero spiritual support, wondering, why your soul hurts. Yeah, that's a double entendre on that one for all of you out there with those hurting feet. A component of that is your socks. Now, I'll talk about those good socks in a minute, what I've experienced over the last week. There are cold spots and thin patches on those old socks, areas of life where you've grown weary, where you've worn, or simply stretched out of life's pressures. And we all have those pressures. And I know that a guy of my size and my weight, I've put a lot of pressure on those socks. And some of you have faced a lot of pressures in your life. And it's analogous to those socks. You know, the mysterious hole in the toe. You know, I was harassing, and I won't say his name right now because he didn't give me permission, but I was harassing someone just a few weeks ago about the holes in his socks. But again, so I'm not the only one that just love on a pair of socks for too long. You know, the one that wasn't there seemingly yesterday, but suddenly your big toe is peeking out. Like, hey, I just wanted to see how it's going up there. You know, those. And some of you have a pair of those socks and you keep telling yourself, I'm going to get rid of them, but they're always hanging around. And that big toe is always hanging out. And you can feel it once you put your shoes on. It's always slipping, those socks. Just when you try to stand firm, the sock decides to slide inside your shoe. And that's the worst, especially when it slides down below your heel. I've got a couple of pair of those, and those are the ones I call the quitter socks. And folks, that's how people's lives are before they met Jesus. That's how people's lives are if they don't know Jesus. In this season of Thanksgiving, in this holiday season, make it your purpose to introduce someone to Jesus. If you want to use this analogy, you want to get them some new socks, use this analogy. But let's be honest, old socks could be a whole testimony. Old socks could be a whole song. Old socks are tired and worn out. But as I mentioned last week, my new socks came in, folks. Last week, I got a pack of 12 new socks that fit, that have the cushion in them, that have the supporting spring that goes all the way up above my calf and foot, fit all the way over my foot. And I want to compare that to walking with Jesus in your life, folks. A new pair of socks. You know, I put those socks on and I thought about how those old socks fit and how these new socks fit. It was like an instant revival. It was like instant comfort. I knew I was there. I knew I did the right thing when I purchased those socks. I didn't get up and dance that morning because it was still too early. Didn't want to wake Nicole up. She'd have thought something was going on with me. But I felt an instant praise break coming on as soon as I put my shoes on, and I could feel that support. New socks. They create room for your toes. You're no longer boxed in. You have a freedom in Jesus. No more cramped living. You know, a lot of people they say, well, no, that this lifestyle with Christ is too confining. I want to let you know. He says, I come to give you life and give it more abundantly. God gives us space to grow, to stretch, and to move with ease, folks. Those new socks. And the thing I alluded to prior, those new socks are thick and cushiony. Yeah, I walked all day and my arch is supported. His mercy cushions our steps, folks. Even when life gives us rocky roads, a part of my life is walking through a plant now. It wasn't as hard last week. Yeah, I did those same steps I typically take. But with those new socks on, I could feel the difference because there's security with no blisters, with Christ in your life. Walking with the Savior protects you from the irritations of life, protects you from the rubbing and the friction, from the tearing up of the adversary who comes in, like John 10:10 says, to steal, kill, and destroy. There's a security because Jesus says, I come to give you life and more abundantly. Those new socks, they were snug when I put them on, but they weren't tight. They fit the way they were supposed to in that toe box. His presence holds us, folks, but it never suffocates us. He's always around us, wrapped his arms around us, just like those socks engulfed my foot, all of my foot. And the one thing that I really enjoyed when I put those socks on, there was no slipping. The Spirit gives traction. Those socks gave me traction in my shoes that I hadn't had in a while. You can walk with confidence and not slide back into your old habits, just like those socks gave me the ability to walk in the plant with confidence. And I didn't feel that little twinge of slipping as I walked those many steps that I have to do because I have new socks. A new pair of socks feel like God saying, I see you. I care about you. I comfort you. I'm calling you. Walking with Jesus in life is like a new pair of socks. But that spiritual sock message sounds like this, folks. And I'm about to get out of here so I can go back and check on that kitchen and what we're doing in there. Sometimes we expect God to show up in the thunder and lightning. And sometimes he shows up in the simple joy of new socks. And last week when I put those socks on, I felt it. I knew that I made the right decision when I purchased those socks. And I'm going to make a better decision when I get rid of those old socks because those new socks remind us of who we're becoming in Christ. And just like we don't keep wearing stretched out, hole ridden socks, we don't have to keep walking in worn out ways of thinking, worn out ways of living, and worn out ways of believing, folks. God has new grace every morning. He has new mercy and he has new strength day by day. And yes, new socks for our soul. So as a reminder and as a word of encouragement, not only for this Wednesday night, but for this holiday season, God renews, God refreshes, and God restores. And God cares about the little things, even that little baby pinky toe, because mine feels better, not cramped in those old socks. So walk in comfort for the rest of 2025. Walk in joy as we approach 2026. And walk in the newness that Jesus provides with that soft supported and blister free and filled with grace, just like a new pair of socks. Happy Thanksgiving. Hope you'll hear this tonight. If not, you'll listen to it tomorrow as you enjoy family and turkey and ham and all of the fixings. Be blessed. I love you all to life. Pastor Jay, I've got new socks. If you need some new ones, go on Amazon. They have a great sale on Friday. Love you all. Take care.